It's so interesting what you're saying, the invisible illness, and people don't see it, so they think you're okay. So how do you deal with that with people who don't understand? Maybe you have to bring your own food somewhere. What kind of things do you deal with because it's an invisible illness, and how do you deal with it?
It hasn't happened recently, but I do remember, especially early on in my 20s, it would happen a lot, and in my early 30s, where people would learn about my story and would say innocently, but you don't look sick. And I know that people say that, and I don't think their hearts are in the wrong place, but that's like if a person's loved one dies and a person says they are in a better place. You don't want to hear that at that time, that your loved one's in a better place. And you know that the people mean, but it's the same as you don't look sick, it can be very offensive.
Great title for a podcast, Blessings.
Thank you. Yes, I love it.
What a great meditation.
We are here to learn in the spirit of life.
I'm all about believe. You're about spreading blessings. It's great.
What about your blessings? What's the biggest blessing of life?
What a great question.
Because it's the Blessings podcast, I have to ask you, what is your biggest lesson in life?
My biggest lesson in life.
A whole lot of conversations with people about life and how those things manifest as blessings and lessons, and sometimes both.
It's my connection.
You're going to get schooled.
The journey is the journey.
What you and me are searching for are the blessings in this life.
Remember the reality of how sweet people are.
Spread blessings around the world.
You are the most remarkable energy. You make me pause, make me excited, make me think, and make me spontaneously come up with an answer. This is another one of those great moments in time in my life. Thank you for reaching out to ask if I would do the show.
Welcome back to Blessings, my friends. She was told to get her affairs in order, yet here she is, because today's guest, Alethea Felton, is a model of resilience and grace under pressure. She has refused to allow health challenges to define her, nor to direct her life. Born in Southern Virginia, Alethea is a Southern girl with a heart of gold who loves helping others to learn how to thrive as she has. She's a cat mom. She's fascinated with mermaids, which I love, and she loves digging into her genealogy. Me too. Her life story is full of the highs and lows that we all find relatable. Let's get into it. Welcome, Alethea Felton, to the show.
Thank you, Mitzi. I'm so glad to be here to share about so many blessings that I have had in my life. Thank you.
You're welcome. Because you are someone who, your story is very important to your identity, your brand identity, your personal identity. So I want to start out with something in your story that you might not have shared before, and that is your earliest memory. So I want you to just think right now, what is the very first thing that you can remember actually happening in your life?
I already know what that is. I do. So serious. I remember it was literally so I started walking really early and talking very early as well. And the earliest memory is I remember the night before I was turning 2 years old. And I said these exact words. I said, "Ma, I gonna eat 2, right?" Which means, "Mom, tomorrow I'm going to be 2, right?" And my nickname's Lily. And she said, "Yes, Lily." And I said it again. Ma, I gonna eat, ooh. She says, "Yes, Lily, you're gonna be 2 tomorrow." And I was in my crib because I even remember the day that they got rid of my crib. So I asked her a third time, and my mom says, she actually came in the room, leaned over the crib and says, "Yes, tomorrow you're gonna be 2, but there's a rule that if you keep asking about it, then that day is going to skip and you're going to miss your birthday." And I said, "Okay." And then I went to sleep because I wasn't going to sleep. So my mom said that I missed my birthday if I kept asking.
Oh my gosh, so funny.
Mm-hmm. That's my earliest memory. And I remember telling my mom that, and she couldn't believe that I remembered that. "You remembered that?" I said, "Yeah, that's my earliest memory."
She remembered it too, the same way.
Uh-huh. And she remembered telling me that, and she couldn't believe. And that's not a story that we've talked about over the years, but I brought it up to her a few months ago, actually. That's my earliest memory.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It doesn't
And
surprise me that you were an early talker.
oh, yes, girl, yes. I was an early talker, early walker. And so I don't remember this, but I have an older sister that's 3 years older. And my mom said that she remembers when I was a baby, I would stretch out my arms every time my sister walked by because I wanted to be near her. And then she said, finally, one day I just got up and I started walking. I was like about eight months or something like that. And I got up and just started walking toward my sister.
At 8 months old?
8 months, almost 9 months. I was an early walker.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
weird because she always could tell I wanted to be near her. And that's not surprising to me because my sister and I are so close. We're very
Oh,
close.
that's
And
beautiful.
my sister said she remembers just wanting to be by herself sometimes. So she would see me coming towards her and would hide some, and then I would start to cry, and then she would feel badly and would come out to me.
Oh, so cute.
Yeah.
Did you crawl? Do you know?
I did crawl. I crawled first. Yeah.
Interesting. One of my kids did not crawl. I have 3 kids. One of them never crawled.
Really?
Yeah, he just went right to walking, and very early by 1.
He said, forget this.
Exactly. Because I don't have to crawl along on the ground. Just get up and walk.
Nope. He didn't have time. He didn't have
No.
time for that.
So true.
So look, he had probably said, wait a minute, I see all the grown-ups walking. They aren't crawling, so why am I going to crawl?
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. Yes. Oh my
Fascinating.
gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. So I know that one of the major things I want to talk to you about is your health challenges that you've had over the years. And it's a big part of what you share because of overcoming that has offered so much help to others. And I think there's so many lessons in that. When did that all start for you? Was it as a child?
It was in utero. So when I was when I was in my mom's womb, because when I was born, the health challenges were already there. So one thing that my mom recalls during her pregnancy with me, she said I was a very active baby in her womb, very active, to a point where, and I used to get on her about this, is she wouldn't abuse me. I have a wonderful mom, but sometimes she couldn't sleep. So she would try to shift me and move me and say, stop, because I was so active in her womb. And when I came out, I'm sharing this story that I tell her didn't happen, but I'm sure that it did. She said, as soon as I came out and they plopped me on her chest, excuse me, kind of gross, I had the largest bowel movement ever, right as soon as they put me on her chest. And she said she didn't think twice about it then, although it was like, why did this kid just poop on me? But I had a severe case of jaundice. And although certain babies come out jaundiced, I was very yellow and I always had discolored toenails. So not all of them, but a few of my toenails were brown or black. And so as a toddler, I remember looking down at my feet and I thought God painted my toenails. So I thought they were special. And although my parents took me to doctor's appointments, I was always sickly as a kid, had stunted growth, and my mom took me to the doctors and said something's wrong. I had colic for a long time, longer than usual. So I was screaming my head off. And I was just a child who was always complaining about aches and pains. My father, frankly, thought maybe my mom was being a hypochondriac, but mothers know their kids from what I'm told. And she knew something was wrong, and I was always just sick. So years later, Mitzi, they discovered I had a defective liver, nothing that my parents caused, but a genetic abnormality. And then later on, they learned I had Crohn's. And the doctors are convinced that at least the liver was from the time I was born.
Wow.
Hmm.
So how long did it take for them to get those answers?
Those official diagnoses, this is the miraculous part. It took literally, I was officially diagnosed at 28
Wow.
years old, but I was always sick as a kid. But you have to think, I'm like at that, according to the charts now, they say I'm millennial, but I consider myself Gen X because when I was growing up, 1981 was like still on that Gen X chart, and then
Yeah.
the charts changed. So I'm the last of what I say is Gen X. So in the 80s, they didn't have all, not to say that they didn't have all of the testings, but my mom took me to doctors, regular appointments, but doctor said, oh, she's just having growing pains, or everything's fine,
Mhm.
because I was always carrying a cold. I was always sick, but I vomited a lot. And my mom said that's not normal. So it's really unfortunate where you look back on things and my mom feels like her cries fell on deaf ears.
Mhm.
So it could have been diagnosed earlier because I always remember I just didn't feel well. But since I was in my body, I thought everybody felt like this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I never really felt well.
Oh, but the jaundice went away.
It did end up going away, but the discolored toenails never did. So even
And
to this day, that's why I get regular pedicures and stuff. They were like that since birth. And she asked about that. I've got this newborn baby with discolored toenails. Why aren't her toenails clear? Oh, she's okay. She's fine. This, that, and the third.
so the discolored toenails are a sign of what?
Liver disease.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not fungus. They had
Yeah.
said maybe it's some fungus, but then she's like, why is a baby born with fungus? But it's not
Yeah,
in
no.
my case.
Okay.
It's liver.
That's
Mm-hmm.
crazy that it went on for so long.
Sure did. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so let's just go through your health journey. So I know you came to a crisis point. You're going
Yeah.
to just go through the journey for us?
Sure. If this is 2025, let me think back to when I started having in 2000, I had just some severe sickness where I didn't know what was going on. So I went to my primary care specialist, who was an internal medicine doctor. So what I found out later was that internal medicine doctors take a gamut, a spectrum of tests, different
Mm.
lab work that just regular doctors wouldn't, or general practitioners wouldn't. So with her doing that, she gave me a scope of testing and labs that started to show elevated liver enzymes. So from there, she sent me to a friend of hers who is a hepatologist. That hepatologist then started taking a series of tests and said, you have some type of autoimmune illness. And she did an extensive battery of testing on me, asked about childhood questions. My mom actually came to a few doctor's appointments because by that time I lived up in DC and my parents moved up temporarily with me then too. I had lived in DC prior, but my father had gotten sick in 2008. And so he and my mom came up briefly. So, anyway, my mom would also go to those appointments with me because my hepatologist at the time wanted to know more about my childhood, how I felt at X, Y, and Z. So, at first, they thought I had sarcoidosis because there were certain symptoms going towards that. Then she said maybe it's celiac. Long story short, she did her due diligence to keep testing me until she finally came to a conclusion. She went to a liver doctors conference that was somewhere. And at that conference, she was telling me that they choose cases to talk about during the conference based on how either rare they are or interesting. she submitted me as a possible case and they chose me. And from there, that's when they discovered that I had a condition called autoimmune hepatitis type 1. And then years later, something else with my liver was diagnosed. But I finally had a name for what caused the autoimmune hepatitis. And it's pretty much when the liver fights itself. It's not caused by your typical HEPs, like Hep A, B, C. Autoimmune hepatitis is something that is totally outside of your control. It can't be spread. It's not contagious. It can't be passed on. And so that's what they discovered was wrong with my liver. And then approximately 9 years later, in 2017, that's when they also found out that I officially had Crohn's disease. They thought I had ulcerative colitis, but they learned I also had Crohn's and a condition of the bile ducts called primary sclerosing cholangitis, which is hardening of the bile ducts, which also leads to liver failure. So my point in sharing all of that, especially for any of your audience who may have health challenges, when it comes to autoimmune illness or invisible illnesses, it can take years to be diagnosed. Sometimes it's never diagnosed, and oftentimes it's misdiagnosed. And I can speak as a woman of color, being Black as well as Hispanic, is that there is proof that in our communities, we're often misdiagnosed because they think it looks like something else. And for me, the conditions I have are more commonly found in European populations. But I have, of course, European heritage. And so that's why it shows up even in me.
Wow, that is very interesting.
Yeah.
And that it takes so long. I love what you said about invisible illnesses, because I know we've talked about this a little bit, that discovered an autoimmune type of illness in myself only 2.5 years ago. Nothing nearly as severe as what you've been carrying for your life, but I can relate to the invisible illness thing, because there are many, I'm going to call them illnesses, but conditions of the body that are complex and nuanced, and doctors do not know. You cannot go to your doctor and think the doctor's going to have all the answers. They don't. They, like you just said, your doctor presented it to a group, and that's how they brainstormed and came up with the conclusion, which is doctors can't do that. Not every doctor has access to that. They're working on their own. They're looking at protocols and things they have to follow. And thinking out of the box is not something that doctors do very well in the office. It took me having to go onto forums, go onto PubMed, find research articles, and find out what could be wrong. And then getting into communities where people were talking about it so I could really hone in on the symptoms that other people were having. And then I found a doctor through a forum because other people were talking about it.
Incredible.
I know.
Wow.
And I found this absolutely brilliant doctor who specializes in MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, and histamine intolerance. And they wanted to diagnose me with MS and send me to neurology and have all kinds of crazy like scans and stuff. And all I had to do was change my diet and take some supplements. And like you said, too, finding a doctor that will do, because this is a problem, I think, insurance companies are only going to cover certain blood tests, the quote, regular normal tests, right? To get those really specific tests is so important, and they're often not covered right away. That's why doctors don't want to ask for them. I didn't have insurance, and my doctor prescribed all this blood work, and I went in and they told me it was going to be $6,000 to get this blood work done. So I said, I worked with the doctor, can you just work on a couple of the most important tests to start? And she was like, she's just brilliant. So she knows exactly what to test for. But it's so interesting what you're saying, like the invisible illness, and people don't see it. So they think you're okay. And so how do you deal with that with people who don't understand? Maybe you have to bring your own food somewhere, or you can't and what kind of things do you deal with because it's an invisible illness? And how do you deal with it?
It hasn't happened recently, but I do remember, especially early on in my 20s, it would happen a lot. And in my early 30s, where people would learn about my story and would say innocently, but you don't look sick. And I know that people say that, and I don't think their hearts are in the wrong place, but that's like if a person's loved one dies and a person says they are in a better place. You don't want to hear that at that time, that your loved one's in a better place. And you know that the people mean, but it's the same as you don't look sick can be very offensive. I will be transparent with you, and he'll probably listen to this. And it's not to disparage him in any way, but I have an amazing boyfriend. He is the best man I've ever been with. He supports me. We grew up together, but we didn't date, of course, until years later. So we've been together about a year and a half, and he is my guy, and he is amazing, and he understands my health challenges. But I have a handicap placard. And early on in our relationship, he got a little, I don't want to say uncomfortable, but he was very curious as to why I had a handicap placard when he said, but you aren't handicapped or you aren't disabled. And this might be stereotyping, but as a woman, I got in my feelings and I got very defensive. What do you mean I'm not disabled? I'm a handicap. And I had to pump the brakes on myself to say, wait a minute, educate him on it. Because he really didn't mean harm by it. He understands the conditions, but he didn't understand. And that's when I had to tell him, honey, these are covered in the Americans with Disabilities Act. This is a disability because once I educated him, he honestly said, I didn't know. And most people don't know. Even as much as he understands my conditions, wants to learn more, that is not a deterrent from wanting to be with me. Even he had to be educated. So I've learned over the years to not be offended as much and to not take it personally. I think I reacted with him that way because I love him and he loves me. And I said, why didn't you know this? But you have to teach people. So I find myself more and more telling people avoid judging books by their covers, because a person may see someone parking in a handicapped spot and say, why? I have a placard because when I was in some severe Crohn's flares, I might have to get to the bathroom quickly. But one of the issues I've dealt with my entire life, even with working out, has been joint pain. I've always had joint aches and pains my entire life, even as a kid. And so sometimes I need to park closer because my body hurts. And I'm a person that works out. I eat sensibly. I strength train. I do all of the things you're supposed to do to stay healthy. But with many autoimmune illnesses, I do it because I enjoy it, but it doesn't necessarily fix the problem. Now, with some conditions, I can say if you make certain lifestyle changes, your symptoms can be alleviated or taken away or not disrupted. So even with me, I take certain supplements. I know what to avoid in terms of eating, and it doesn't necessarily cure it, but it keeps me at a place now where I haven't been hospitalized in 5 years, going on 6.
Oh,
So that's how I respond to it, is I just try to educate people on it. And I know one time during a Crohn's flare was really bad. I was on a chemo drug. It's not classified as such anymore, but it was once used as a chemo drug. With it being a chemo drug, I felt all of those symptoms of chemo. And I physically just didn't feel good during that time. And people would wonder why I had to use a cane sometimes, or why I had to do X, Y, and Z. What's wrong with you? And then when you tell them, you can't see organs, so you don't know what's going on with a person's organs. Skin is probably the only organ you can see. But in terms of your colon, liver, things like that. People can't see it.
Yeah. Oh my God. What a great point. You can't see it. And the idea of having compassion for someone who is using the handicap parking spot and you might not see what their reason is for needing to park close, like to really have a sensitivity for that.
Yeah.
We just never know what other people are going through.
Girl, no, you don't know. Just like even with people who are, so I'm what is considered plus size, but my height helps me. So I've never been thin, but I carry my weight very well. But there was a time when I was on high dosages of prednisone and I blew up horribly. And I was on prednisone for years, right?
Wow.
Thank God I'm not anymore. But years. And what that can do in high dosages, it gives what's called moon face syndrome and it bloats you. So there was a time when I blew up like a balloon. I just looked really puffy. I wasn't wide, but I was really puffy and just did not feel well. And I had a 20-year career as a public school educator. And I remember a time I was in leadership and a student who had a lot of emotional issues. We in the school were trying to catch him. And so it was all hands on that catch, meaning that he ran
away.
Class. Okay.
Literally catch him.
In America. But anyway.
Oh yes, I've been there. I've taught in some schools like that.
So I remember I saw him in a stairwell. And although I didn't teach him, I was in leadership and I tried to speak gently to him. And because of his issues, he cursed me and he used the word fat and everything else. And I could have gotten upset, but I told him, I said, baby, I'm fat because I'm sick. And he paused because he was a sixth grader. He stopped. He said, you're sick. And I said, yes, sweetheart. And he said, and that makes you fat. I said, yeah, it blows me up. When I said I'm on something called prednisone, he said, my grandma's on that.
And you related to him.
He related. And I said, look, everybody's tired. Everybody's trying to find you. I said, can I walk you to the office? I'll tell them that you came on your own will. He said, yeah. I spoke to him off a ledge. And I didn't have to tell him that personal stuff. But I said, this could be a teachable moment. And walked him to the office. And we continued our day. Of course, it hurt. I'm not going to act like it didn't hurt because that was a trouble area I had. And then I also ended up, Mitzi, I've never spoken publicly about this. I got diagnosed with body dysmorphia because of the prednisone. I saw myself larger. So even to this day, I'm really critical of how I look in pictures and I have to get myself back to talking it off. Even though I coach people and stuff like that, I'm still human. And I have to go back and shift my mindset and to say no. But that's some of the trauma that these conditions can bring onto you. And so that's why I try to tell people, just be really careful because just because a person's thin, I know a lot of thin people who are so sick and have so many illnesses. And yes, I understand removing weight is helpful. And I encourage people, if you have the extra pounds, do your best if you can to get them off, but to also know these conditions affect anybody and can make your body look any kind of way. So just because you might be slim and trim doesn't necessarily mean you're healthy. And so if we can just get out of that stigma that I'm going to promote good health, I'm going to promote exercising at how you can, but I'm also going to say, just put a pause button because we don't know what a person's experiencing.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful reminder. How would you like to get the best text of your life? This is your sign that it's time to add something powerful to your morning routine that sets you up for success and reminds you that you are worthy and makes you unstoppable. It's a motivational text message from me, a real human. I am Mitzi Campbell, a mindset specialist, and I know that it is possible for you to live the life of your dreams. My morning motivational text messages help you up-level your mindset, your happiness, and your success. Sign up for a 2-week free trial at yourpositivemoment.com and change your life. Today, join the movement so we can all thrive together. yourpositivemoment.com. I love that you talked a lot about it was a choice you made not to take offense. Just because something hurts us and it's painful doesn't mean we have to take offense, because then we're putting ourselves into a victim mentality and we want to be a victor. And I wonder, when people get stuck in their conditions become their identity, and how do we help them? What do you suggest to help them take that mindset that you have, the growth mindset, I can live a full life mindset, I'm worthy of love kind of mindset?
That is a beautiful question. Thank you for asking that, because I will tell you, this is my experience, and I'm not saying this from a place of arrogance, but I am in certain groups, whether it be on Facebook or elsewhere. And sadly, Mitzi, that's what I see a lot of.
Yeah.
Are people who it's the woe is me, I'm a victim, this is horrible, nothing's going to get better. And it's a continued chorus of this. And then there's sprinkles of the people who say, hey, I've lived with this X amount of years, or I've lived through that. This is what I say in my coaching and my speaking platforms. First of all, yes, acknowledge the reality of your situation. I'm never going to say that everything's happy joy all day long, every day. I'd be lying, because I went through my bouts of depression and anger and all of that, right? Yeah. But I also say, yes, acknowledge it, but begin to give yourself a time limit to stay in that space. So say if you're having a really cruddy day and you just feel bad and you're mad with the world, get a clock, get a timer or something, and say, start where you are. If you need a good hour to just feel how you feel, take that hour. And then after that, though, you have to have a game plan to say, when that hour's up, although my situation isn't going to be different, after that hour's over, I can choose to at least do some deep breaths and breathe in and out, to talk to my higher power. And if I don't have one, then talk to the chair or the table or the desk. I tell anybody, when you're dealing with these conditions or just life in general, I'm a person of faith. But even if you aren't, I tell people, you got to transfer that energy to something. So if it's a pencil in front of you, you need to give it away to that pencil, something, because you can't carry it. So I tell people, breathe after that, let it out, release. If you're angry about it, say that you're angry about it. Then from there, I am big on affirmations. And sometimes people don't understand the power that our mouth and our words have with our mindset and the creation of that in our reality. So what I mean by that is, there are times when I've not felt good, but I have said, I am healthy, whole, and healed. Mitzi, I know that's not necessarily what the labs say, but it does something off of my own experience. It does something when I say it. It becomes a part of me. It resonates with me, and I have the extra strength to continue to move on. And the ultimate key with that, got to be around community and support that's going to uplift you and encourage you. If I'm around people all day that have this victim mindset and this woe is me and I can't do anything, then guess what? You're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
But if you choose, it takes practice. It doesn't happen overnight. There's a quote I love, and it says, "Don't judge my story by the chapter you walked in on." Because
Oh,
sometimes people can see you or me and say, wow, they have all this. They didn't see those nights that we cried. They didn't see those nights we were angry. They didn't see the behind the scenes. And it's not to say those times don't come, but I can choose. I can choose to say, I do not have to be a victim to my circumstances.
that's right.
And it takes time to do it. And like I said, continued practice. So there are a list of things. I do visualization strategies, the whole nine, a lot of things, because I am a certified holistic coach as well. So there are a gamut of things that I do, but those are at least three tangible things. Give yourself a time limit, do some breathing, transfer that energy for, and to start saying some positive affirmations. That's a start.
Oh, those are such great suggestions. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And it really is about your perception. I can go online at any given time and see people I know who perceive the world as a completely different kind of place than the way I perceive it. And that is a choice. I know some people don't believe it's a choice. They believe these are people who are externally motivated, but your circumstances do not have to dictate your feelings and your experience of the world. It's hard. It's not easy, especially if you have a chronic condition, but it's so interesting. All right. So I want to shift the focus just a little bit because you and I were talking about something I want to touch on this. In the personal development world that we're both in, we look for a community, we look for mentors. And I have, for the first time in my life, spent money to join groups and paid for groups. These things are not free. There are lots of free resources, but the idea of paying to be a part of something that is at a higher level, that's going to empower you in a new way, and then making an investment, getting an investment back. It's all that energy, the flow of that. But we spoke about the idea of having an experience where we both had this experience. We hired a coach, gave them a lot of money, And I'm not going to say the amount that I spent, but because people would be floored. Money that I had been saving for something else that I didn't really have to give away. And I did not get back what I expected to get back for that amount of money. In fact, when I hired this person, my only real question was, if I spend this amount of money with you, am I going to get it back? Am I going to learn strategies and tools that will help me to implement in my business and get things going so that I will get a return on this investment? And they promised me yes. And I will get that return at some point, yes, but it won't be directly because of their assistance. And I'm no longer working with that person anymore. So anyway, I want to talk with you about this because I know this happened to you. Can you tell us the story?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I will tell the story. And one thing, like how you and I both do, your audience knows, but you are such a woman of integrity and character where, although Mitzi and I have talked about this, neither of us shared who the coach was or anything like that. And we won't, and I won't share it publicly.
No. And also I want to say, before you start your story, I don't put myself in the position of victim. I don't blame them.
No.
I don't blame them. I take responsibility for this. And it was a very big lesson. And it's my responsibility to make sure that I do get that return. And I will get that return. I'm in the process of getting that return now.
Oh, good.
It just didn't come the way, and I think maybe that's a good point. It just didn't come the way I expected. It wasn't a direct one-for-one kind of return thing.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You know what I'm saying? It was very disappointing in the moment because I expected I'm going to pay and then this person's going to give me the magic key.
So mine was a little different. Mine was where we were supposed to, because it was a cohort, but we pay individually. We were supposed to get certain things that didn't happen. But let me tell you just briefly what happened, because this could be a show by itself. So I had a very good business coach for many years. His name is John Narrow, and I'm going to call him out because he is still a friend. He was wonderful to me and everything. I had known him for years. But in December of 2023, and John, I credit him for actually giving me the oomph to start my own podcast. But at the end of 2023, John lovingly fired me. And what I mean by that is John said that he had tapped out as to how far he could take me with my business. And he said, I could keep taking your money, X, Y, and Z, but I would be doing a huge disservice to you. That's a real friend and coach. Yeah. And so John said to me, I'm not ending our bond, but I think you need to spend the first quarter of 2024 really finding someone who can take you to where you want to go. And what he meant by that is he knew I had higher heights. And just for my platform, he knew that I needed something on a bigger scale. So he gave me a recommendation of a person, and I didn't take that recommendation. I'll be totally honest. I didn't take it because I went to the person's site. I was like, I don't know. I don't think this is a good fit. So I chose to do my own research and homework, came across someone that online has a very great presence and a lot of followers, which I'm learning, don't be fooled by follower count. That is not a good sign sometimes. Yes. Has so many followers. And I said, okay, I'm being fully transparent. I said, I had a white male coach. Let me find somebody that's a woman, blah, blah, blah. So did research, and there's nothing wrong with that because I'm a coach and I'm a woman. But long story short, I found somebody, and I'm a researcher. So I checked, did all my research, dotted my I's, crossed my T, made a huge, I'm not going to share the amount yet, but I will in the future, because that's a part of the story too. I will in the future because I'm going to make it back plus triple. Yeah. But invest a huge amount of money. However, a big problem I had, a red flag I had, was when I read the contract. There was a clause in the contract that was really odd to me, but I still signed it anyway. And it said that for 10 years, you could not speak disparaging comments publicly or identify the person on social media or anything for 10 years. And I said, that's weird. That would be in there. And I have a business attorney, and I didn't have my attorney read my contract because it felt like we were being pressured, we as a cohort, but I was being pressured to sign it and pay within a certain time frame where it became like, I've got to. And my attorney, with her schedule, I knew she wouldn't be able to that quickly. So I paid up front. I had cash on hand, paid up front. I didn't want to finance, paid it. I was like, I'm going to be getting back this investment, joined the program. It was about a 3 or 4 month program. So many problems, so many issues, did not get what we were told we were going to get as a cohort. But the blessing that I learned, the lesson and blessing that I learned, lesson was always go with your intuition and your gut. And one of the blessings, though, is that out of that cohort, there are about 4 or 5 ladies that I am so still incredibly close with who have enhanced my life tremendously. And if I hadn't have gone through that program, I wouldn't have met them. And I actually ended it early, like a lot of us, because it was horrible. And I ended up talking to my attorney as well as my accountant about it. Thankfully, I was able to count it as a business expense. We didn't have to go through a lot of the red tape. Although my attorney said, girl, next time you let me know something like that. That's why you have me on counsel. Mm-hmm. And so that was my experience. But audience, there's a beautiful story behind this. Several months later, I did get another business coach by happenstance. I wasn't even looking for him. He found me through a community that I joined, and he is my business coach now. And we are making some major moves in what I am doing, and I have never been happier.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what usually is the thing, the thing that we think is not working, or the thing that we think, oh, that was a bad decision, or wow, I lost all that money. But it's actually a part of the process. It is a stepping stone along the way. And that's how I look at it too. But I also want to point out there are a lot of scammy coaches out there who will it's a sales game, and you will find out, like you were talking about, the idea that just because someone looks great online, oftentimes they are presenting themselves in a way that isn't authentic.
Yeah.
So
And
knowing the difference
yeah,
is hard to do.
it really is. And I'm the type of a person, I am not a scandalous person. I am not about drama. So even on my LinkedIn's, stuff like that, I don't even say anywhere that I was a part of that program.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not public knowledge or anything like that, because I would never do that to that person, because they have put their heart into their business. And I have learned other people have had issues too. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to do anything to a person, even people privately that I talk to about, even with my current coach. He doesn't know who the person is. I'm not like that. I'm not gonna do it. So
yeah, and I think that's really important, because the way that you use your words has significance in the world. What you say, how you talk about people, and that is really important. I'm the same way. I'm exactly the same way with it.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing to point out in this space, the personal development space, that it's something you run into. And I know a lot of people who've hired people that didn't work out. They've ended contracts early. It really is finding the right fit for you. And along the way, you will begin to meet people, because being a part of the wrong world often leads you into the right world.
It does. Isn't it wild? That's really amazing.
Yeah. So true. Okay. So I want to ask you one last question before I get your blessings and lessons.
Okay.
Because I think it's a really good question for you, and I can't wait to hear how you were going to answer this. What would you focus on if you weren't afraid of failing?
Oh, I've never been asked this. That's why I love it. What would I focus on?
Like, boom, what comes to your mind? What's the thing you're not doing?
I'm drawing a blank, because I really am. I'm drawing a blank because I'm not really afraid of failing anything at this point in life. I'm not going to act like I haven't had that before. What would I focus on if I wasn't afraid of failing? This is going to sound silly because it has nothing to do with what I do, but if I could climb a mountain and know there was no chance of me falling, I would definitely do that.
I love that answer.
I'm so serious. If I could literally climb, mountain climb, knowing I'm not gonna fall. I would love to do things like that. I always wanted to be an astronaut as a kid. So any type of thing dealing with heights and things like that, I would love to do it. I got bored of roller coasters when I was 39, so I haven't been on a roller coaster. I literally got on my last roller coaster at 39, and I was like, I don't have the thrill anymore for it.
That's so funny. Yeah. I started riding roller coasters. I started a rule in my 40s. I was only going to ride in the front seat.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's fun.
I think if I did it now, though, I'd probably get vertigo because of my issues.
Yeah.
But would you jump out of a plane if you could?
You know what? I had a big passion to skydive in my 30s. I never did, but that thrill is also gone now. It might come back, but if I had the opportunity, I don't know if I would now be because it doesn't excite me, but I know that I wanted to at one point.
Really? I never wanted to, and I don't think I would, but I'll tell you a quick story.
Yeah.
My boyfriend rides motorcycles, and he was out one day riding his motorcycle with a few other guys. And they decided, they got a wild hair, and they decided, we're going to stop at the airport and we're going to go jump out of a plane. And they did on the spot. They were driving, riding around. They went to
Yeah.
the airport where they go there just to have breakfast, just like a little diner. They go to have breakfast, and they were like, we're going to jump out of a plane. They did the training right there on the spot, and they all jumped out of a plane on the spot.
Amazing.
It was so funny. I was like, you
That
did
is
what?
So cool. That is so cool.
I know.
Yeah,
Like
I love that.
spontaneous.
Yes, I love that.
I don't have that. I have a spontaneous bone, but it's not that spontaneous that I'm going to jump out of a plane.
I get it. Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
I love it. Maybe get on a plane and fly somewhere really cool. Yes.
Yeah.
I would do that, but not jump out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what would you say is one of the biggest lessons that you've learned in life?
One of the biggest lessons I've learned in life is to take one day at a time. And if you'd like me to elaborate, I can. But
Yes.
I used to worry about what would be, what hasn't happened yet, how are things going to be. And I tended to neglect the present moment. And I learned through therapy that a lot of that was because of the past serious bouts of sicknesses. And honestly, Mitzi, especially with my liver, that condition with the bile ducts, the PSC, that could change on the drop of a dime, where it could change, where I could have to get a transplant, but I might not, right? I'm healthy enough now where I'm not even on the transplant list. But my point is that I tended to be more concerned about the future and getting things done in the future. And one of the pastors at my church, and I never told him this, but I appreciate this. He was one of the campus pastors. His name is Elwood Matthews. And I remember early on during the pandemic, we had a Zoom. And he told me, he said, Lily, learn, which is my nickname. He said, Lily, learn to just take life one day at a time. And it's something that my dad used to always tell me. But I started really thinking about that. You know what? Let me literally try it. And it doesn't mean not to make plans for the future, but I learned to just literally enjoy the moments. So, for example, Mitzi, when I met you in that epic weekend we had with all of those other phenomenal leaders, I learned to enjoy that moment, not what I was going to have for lunch or not how I was going to speak in front of the stage and not, but in that moment when Brandon was giving us those lessons, just really soaking in the moment. That has helped my life tremendously. And we've also learned with the Crohn's flare, part of why I haven't had that. Yes, I get my infusions and I take my meds and supplements because I have naturopathic doctor as well as Western med. But it's also because we learned bad stress would trigger my Crohn's flares, where my gut would get so disrupted off of bad stress because I experienced extreme grief from the deaths of my two best friends. During those times, I had my worst Crohn's flares. So I've had to learn stress management, but just enjoying each day. That's the biggest lesson that I've learned.
That is really profound. And it's something we think of as cliche, but it's not. It is simple and yet like the most powerful thing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
What about your blessings? What do you think are your biggest blessings in life?
My biggest blessings is I'm loved. I'm loved, Mitzi.
Aww.
And that is such a blessing. I am loved from my parents, my sister, relatives, friends. my boyfriend, my cat adores me. Just the fact of being, look, God loves me. I'm loved. And I can give that love elsewhere. It makes a difference in your world. Somebody loves you. And for your audience out there, it doesn't have to be a bunch of people because not everybody's going to like you. You're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. But even if you've had one person in your life to love you, and maybe they're not with you anymore, or they were only in your life for a season, I think every person, I'm just going out on a limb, every might be extreme, but I'm almost convinced that if each person examined their life, they can remember, even if for a fleeting moment, even if it were when they were 4 and they had a grandma who just loved them. Maybe she wasn't in their life long, but I think that if we held on to just thinking about somebody loved me, even if they're not here, that could make a world better, because sometimes life can hit us so hard where we feel like nobody's here for us and nobody loves us. I'm the youngest in terms of my immediate family. And if things go in the order that it should, then that would mean that my father, then my mom, then my sister. There could come a point in my life, even if I'm old, where I might be the only one from my immediate family. And while that might hurt, I can at least hold on to the fact that somebody loved me in this life. And I want to encourage your audience of that too. That's a blessing. Even if it was a teacher, even if it was a neighbor. Sometimes we try to think of, yes, I love romantic love, but sometimes love might not show up in that form for you. So it could be someone. I'm convinced of it. Even the hardened criminal, somebody loved them.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that is a very beautiful thing to point out.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Thank you, Alethea. And I love that we got to have this conversation. Thank you for sharing everything and being so open and vulnerable. And hope you have just a beautiful day. And gosh, thanks again. It's been
Thank
so
you,
good.
Mitzi. Thank you. It has been my pleasure.
Hey, everybody still listening, will you go give a 5-star review to this podcast? Mitzi puts in so much effort and so much love into this. She's brilliant. She deserves it. So I am going to go right now. By the way, by the time you hear this and you go give your 5-star review, you should be able to go find my 5-star review of this podcast. But I just want to thank you for what you're doing.